The blind lead the blind and call themselves visionaries. It's very easy to have a vision. It's very easy to have a desire. It's very easy to have perspective on what is right, what is wrong, on the direction that is best to take. Right? But there are 3 points I want to make on this quote. 3 points I want to emphasize, right? The nuance in terms of why I came up with this quote and why it resonates so much with me and why it very well may resonate with you. So, the first point I want to make is about the dangers of being in the wrong crowd or environment relating to a particular vision, right, and leading. So, when we align ourselves, we can align ourselves with a group, with a crowd, with a direction, right, a person, whatever it might be, um, an idea. But we have to be very careful and diligent that it's a righteous one, that it's a beneficial one, not just for us as individually, but communally for everyone around us. And we can't be blind to that. We can't have blinders on and just thinking that the way we're going right now is the only right way, that this is the only um, environment, the only crowd that is correct, right? Now, there are certain cases where that is the case, right? There is certain situations, environments, people, ideas, whatever it might be, where we can isolate and say, yeah, no, we know this is right. Conventionally and overall in society, we can tell in totality that this is correct. But in a lot of the cases, we're human, so a lot of times we're wrong, right? And so we have to have that mentality. Now, speaking of a mentality, right? Having a herd mentality, which we often can have and often do have as people and as societal creatures, right? When we have one that's for or against something or someone, again, that's a very easy scenario in which we can be disturbed in our vision and where we go with that vision, where that vision takes us, right? We can think, right, that because we have people that agree with us or who follow us, right, or that we agree with them or we follow them, right, that we now have we now have a position, right, of more esteem and we're more correct and we're more, you know, in the proper direction in terms of where we lead or where we're led. Right? However, that isn't always the case, right? And it's hard for us to realize it in those moments because people agree with us and we have our biases in that situation, in that setting. And we think that, well, there can't be any other option. There can't be any other way because this is what's clearly right. This is what everybody else around me is echoing, right? They're confirming this with me. But confirmation in that sense isn't always correct, right? You can have confirmation of something wrong, not know it's wrong. So, from a biblical aspect, I want us to look at First John chapter 2, verse 11, right? Because it gives it overarches exactly what I'm getting at with this emphasis for this particular point, right? And it says, "But he that hateth his brother is in darkness, and walketh in darkness, and knoweth not whither he goeth, because that darkness hath blinded his eyes." I guess I'm using the King James version because I'm archaic that way. It just is what it is. You can use whatever translation you want. It's going to give the same point, more or less. So going on to that, right? When you hate something, now this is in your brother, and it applies to that, of course, but it applies to a variety of things in context. When you hate something, when you hate someone, you're so vehemently focused on that particular hate, that despising, that whatever, right? It might be, however that emotion, how heightened it is for you, right? That you're in darkness. Number one, because it's not love. You're not walking in love, first and foremost. You're not walking within an upright spirit and according to Christ. But even just divided from that, right? Isolated from that, you're walking in darkness as well because you are blinded to the fact of any other possible perspectives. Look at people who are in certain, like for example, in our lives, right? We see people who are more prominent, people who are doing things whether we think they're good or bad or indifferent, and there's people that we just don't like. There's some people that we may even ashamed to admit it, but we actually might hate, right? And because of that, we don't lend ear to any of the good. We don't lend ear to any of the fact that number one, we shouldn't hate them, right? Or whatever thing it is, but that when we hate something, we don't see the positives. We don't we don't see it because we're in darkness. We're shrouded our vision. We have blinders. Right? It says here, we know it, he knows not whither he goeth. You don't know where you're going when you walk in complete darkness. You know, you'll never have that same clarity of vision as you will in light. Right? And that darkness has blinded your eyes. You can't grasp that reality. Right? So you can't lead, right? And often when you have a lot of people that hate a certain thing, or even when they love a certain thing, but especially hate or despise or dislike, it's very easy. Like I said, for that herd mentality, you have a lot of people going then, and then you have the blind in darkness leading the blind, and they're calling themselves visionaries because they're seeing that, well, this is all we see, and this has to be right. Everybody else is agreeing with me. Everybody else is in line. I'm in line with everybody else. All right, that's it. So that's point one. Point two, we must be cautious and aware with what we're able to lead. So we all have different skills, gifts, and abilities that God has given us that we've been blessed and able to develop, right? Sometimes we're able to lead people, groups, projects, and a variety of other things. We've been placed in those positions. We've been afforded those opportunities. However, what's very pertinent about this situation, right, is it's how to say this. It's a very delicate balance you must strike because you can very easily allow yourself to become an exalted sense of self and self-esteem, right, and pride in our abilities and in our desires of okay, well, if we're in a position of leadership and authority where people respond to us, people react to us, people obey us, right, people even respect us or give us reverence to some degree, if we allow ourselves to become prideful in that sense or think that, well, this is it and there's again no other ways, this is everybody's got to follow what I do, what I say, that again can allow us to become easily corrupted, lead us into that diversion of a path, right? And of course, once we do that, when we've got the people who are already following us, again, if they don't know any better or if they don't know any different, if they're not, if they're just following us blindly, right, then we then in turn corrupt them who follow us. That's very dangerous. We have to have a regimented sense of self. We have to have an understanding of, again, okay, we're led not by ourselves, but we're led by Christ. Ideally, that's because if you're always led by something. You're always led by someone. Even the most isolated individuals are always led by someone or by something. It's a matter of what are you being led by, because that will dictate exactly how you lead and who you lead. So the verse that, you know, pushes this home for me is in Matthew chapter 15, verse 14. And it says, and this is where Jesus is speaking as well. Right? Let them alone. They be blind leaders of the blind. And if the blind lead the blind, both shall fall into the ditch. Right? Now, sometimes we also need to actually, like the end of this verse says, we need to kind of learn to let things fail, let ourselves fail, and fall into the ditch to recognize, yeah, okay, no, we were blind. We weren't being led in the proper spot, and we weren't leading in the proper spot, right? But this is kind of where I got half my quote from, right? Is they be blind leaders of the blind, right? If the blind lead the blind, they'll fall into the ditch. Because again, you might go straight for a bit, but once you are isolated in your vision, once you are absolutely, and again, there's sometimes good context of being isolated in the vision, but often it's very difficult, right, to make sure that that is always the case. In cases like these, sometimes it's very easy. Once you're in a certain spot of leadership, a certain spot of authority or reverence or respect within a community, within a group, within a relationship, whatever it might be, it's very easy to allow yourself to become blinded by that. And then when you lead blind, you you have followers who are blind, and you both fall into a ditch. You eventually fall off the course. The final point I want to hit home is we have to understand our hypocrisy in thinking that we're better than others or better in how we do things while ignoring our issues. Right? We can look at people and we can see, well, hey, I don't struggle with what they're struggling with. Like, for example, I have many times had to catch myself because I've looked at people. I've looked at people I've known, people I've been close with, people I've been friends with, acquaintances, people I know to certain degrees to know what they struggle with, and of course know what I struggle with. And I can see certain areas of their life where I'm like, okay, hey, I see you're doing this or saying this or living this way or whatever it might be. And I can say, okay, well, to myself, I'm like, well, I don't struggle with that. So I'm clearly better than them, which may be partially true in the sense that I might be better than them in that regard and not struggling with that. But if I only look at it with that context and with that vision, I completely ignore the fact that I have issues, I have struggles that might even be more severe than them, that are in different realms, different regards, different disciplines, right? But if I'm not recognizing those and I'm not, you know, bringing them before Christ and asking for Him to guide and direct me and to help me overcome these issues, I have no reason, I have no you know capacity. Well, I have capacity, but I have no right, right, to judge someone else or to look at them and be like, huh, well, I'm elevated to them because I don't struggle with that. Right. I might not struggle with that particular issue that they are, but they also don't struggle with what I struggle with, and they can have the exact same, perspective as me. They can look at me and see what I'm doing wrong, what I'm messing up with, right? What I'm, you know, hurting or disrupting, and in the sense have the exact same thoughts, the exact same perspective, and they'd be on a person-to-person basis justified to do so. But spiritually, right? Spiritually, we're not justified in that context. So, continue on that point, right? It doesn't mean that we should be held in that higher regard. Like I said, we might be better than people in some spots, but that doesn't excuse us or allow us to condemn them, right? For what we know they struggle with while being blind, like I was saying, to what we struggle with, or trying to veil our issues so that the world thinks we've got it all together. So that everybody else thinks, oh, this guy is not necessarily perfect. We all know nobody's perfect. But thinking that, oh, this person is literally like perfect in this regard, or they can't do hardly any wrong, or they are really good in this spot. And maybe they are, but when you take in the over, like the encompassing body of work that that person is, spiritually, emotionally, physically, mentally, right, all of this, then you realize that, okay, that's who that person is, and this is where it's good for to to follow them, and good to give them to allow them to lead in certain areas, but in other areas, okay, no, maybe not, right? So we have to make sure we're not veiling ourselves, that we're not blinding not just ourselves, but the rest of the world, everyone who's around us, to make it seem like, oh, we're the best options for leading in this regard when we know we aren't. We just want to be, or we want to lead other people. We want to be in that exalted place that we can't be, right? And the verse that hammers this one home for me, we're staying in Matthew's, but going back a bit, it's Matthew chapter 7 and verse 5. Right? It's a very popular verse. A lot of people will know this one, in or out of religious circles. It says, Jesus again speaking, saying, Thou hypocrite, first cast out the beam out of thine own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to cast out the mote out of thy brother's eye. Right? So again, this is talking also about just not unrighteously judging in a sense, right? And seeing, okay, hey, my brother's got, oh, he's got this issue. He's doing this wrong. I'm not doing it wrong, so I can clearly help. That's our normal intuition. That's our normal, desire effect, right? Because it boasts ourselves up and we think we can, help them out, or that we can be prideful or boastful about it. But then it says, right, first cast out the beam out of your own eye. And I like the word context here because it says beam out of your own eye, but the mote out of your brother's eye. The mote is significantly smaller for a couple of reasons. One, you've got a beam in your eye. Your issues are much closer to you. You may not see them because you're blinded by the huge thing in your face, right? But your brother's issues, they're farther away. You don't maybe necessarily deal with them, with those particular issues. You can see their issues, but you don't deal with them, so you don't understand them. But first, make sure that you are in a spot where you are working on your issues, where you are having God direct you and guide you and build you up, strengthen you, right? Break down what he needs to break down, build up what he needs to build up. And so when you look at it from that perspective, right, you can't lead other people into better situations when you yourself are unwilling or unrecognizing the fact that you have issues that you need to be worked on so you can actually be a better and more equipped and efficient leader in those disciplines. So that's really the crux of it. Um, this was a quote that I'm pretty sure I came up with. I hope I did. I know I did, but I just you know you never know, always know if quotes are caught up by other people at similar times. But that's the quote I've had in my head for years. That I've posted on social media in past years, and just wanted to really kind of go in depth more on a bit of it, just touch base on sharing biblical principles and views and perspectives of it, and why it resonates with me. And I hope it can resonate with those of you watching. And yeah, it's just, I hope it also encourages us, though, to make sure we're not blindly in the blind and calling ourselves visionaries, right? That we are recognizing our faults, we're recognizing where we're strong, where we're weak, but also giving all glory to God and recognizing, right, that, okay, we need Him to help us. We need Him to guide us, to direct us, to fill us with His Spirit and His direction, His guidance, and being fully formed in His will and asking Him to lead us, right? Because, like I was saying earlier, we can't lead anyone or anything properly unless we're being led properly, right? And if we're being led by Christ, if we're being led by God, then it's significantly easier to have a good basis by which to be able to lead ourselves, right? And God may give us that platform to be able to glorify Him in how we lead. So I thank all of you for watching. Those of you who stuck all the way through, and those of you who came in at any particular point of the video. Um, yeah, I thank you for your investment into my going on and my speaking, my ramblings and whatnot. I hope it's been a blessing to each and every one of you who's watched. Uh, I hope you come back for more. And yeah, just hope that blesses each and every one of you as you go on through your journeys in life. Um, and I'll see you when I see you guys. Until then, God bless, be fruitful, and I'll see you when I see you. See you guys.